What's going on, everybody? Hope you're having a good day today. Today we're out here to do a tent review. So first off, I just have to say there's some awesome people out here in the backpacking world. I was going back and forth with some people on a Facebook group about a specific tent and just my opinions on how I thought it would compare to some tents that I own, and just different things, answering some questions. And I made a comment that I'd like to get my hands on one to actually do some videos on and see how it would compare to a couple tents I own. And out of nowhere, a guy in this group sends me a message, says, "Hey, I have that tent, send me your address, I'll ship it to you so you can do some videos. I like your videos." I thought, that's just awesome. There's not too many groups of people where you're gonna find stuff like that. So I'll leave his name out because I don't know how people feel about that, but when you watch this video, I appreciate it for sure. So I was able to get my hands on, I don't know why I'm trying to make it dramatic like you can't tell from the thumbnail, but got my hands on the Outdoor Vitals Fortius one-person trekking pole tent. So I've seen this tent. A lot of you who subscribe to my channel know that I'm doing the Outdoor Vitals 100-mile challenge this year. I've been a big fan of pretty much everything that I've gotten of theirs, whether it was the Shadowlight backpack that I got for my girlfriend to use, which is fantastic, the windbreaker of theirs, just a number of different things, which is the last thing I really need is more stuff. And it's all really well thought out gear. And I've seen this tent and I've seen their different videos, listened to their podcasts, and just the abuse that they've put this tent through, and it's held up very well. So I always wanted to get my hands on it, but quite honestly, already owning the Gossamer Gear the One, the Durston X-Mid one-person tent, now the Tarp Tent Dipole one-person tent, there's really no need for me to buy this tent. Or is there? That was the purpose of this video. If you've watched my review of the Gossamer Gear the One tent, which I'll link in the description on here, that has probably been one of my favorite, if not my favorite, overall ultralight one-person tents that I've owned. It's super packable. It's lightweight, only weighs 20 ounces, and it's very, very roomy for a one-person tent. But I do have some cons, so to speak. One, right out of the gate, being they changed the sizes. So now if you buy it, it is not as big and is not as roomy as the one that was a couple years older, which is what I own. And that kind of makes it it wouldn't work for me. I'm 6'1", almost 6'2". I'm not a small guy, and I fit in the older model. The new model, because they shortened it and they narrowed the foot end down to 21 inches, you can't even fit a wide rectangular pad in it. So to me, that really limited its usability for a lot of people. The other thing being just its design. It's kind of set up, it's kind of a wind sail. One of the positives about it is the extra space you get when it comes to trekking pole tents, specifically one-man trekking pole tents. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I had to put the hood up. I got charcoaled in the sun yesterday on the golf course, so thank goodness for the Outdoor Vitals sun hoodie. So we're gonna have this up today and try to give my neck a break. But anyway, when you get in these one-person trekking pole tents, a lot of them just use one pole, which works. It makes the tent very weather resistant. That kind of almost pyramid style is very good at shedding wind. But the problem for me then is it's just so small on the inside. Like you've got one little spot you can sit, and otherwise you're brushing the back. So I like the two-pole design that the one has, because it kind of arcs up, so it gives you a lot more shoulder space on the inside. The problem with that, though, is there's really not too many angles that it's good in the wind. I've never had it fail, and like I said in that video, plenty of people have used it on through hikes and it works, but it does flap around a lot. So it's just not the most weather resistant tent because it is very, very lightweight. obviously condensation, but that's kind of a one-man tent, single wall tent specifically thing that you're never going to get away from. But there are some advances in tents with ventilation that I think can help. So the reason the Fortius caught my eye, and it goes along with the rest of Outdoor Vitals kind of mindsets, they do make very lightweight gear. Like this tent without the stakes, the tent only weighs 22 to 23 ounces on my scale. I think the whole package with the extra guy lines, which we'll get to, and 8 stakes is 26 ounces. So that is insanely lightweight. The tent compared to the Gossamer Gear the One tent maybe only weighs 2 ounces more than my model. The new Gossamer Gear ones only weigh about 18 ounces. But again, they're smaller, so you get into that, is it really worth the lighter weight if you can't hardly use it? With them, they want stuff that's ultralight, but they want it to be dependable and usable. So there are some features with this that make it much more storm worthy than kind of like the Gossamer Gear the One or other very lightweight ultralight tents. And you'll see some of those when I set this thing up. But I've never used this tent. It's not my tent, but I feel like I can speak with some intelligence because I've done this a lot and I've used a lot of different tents. So I know kind of what I'm looking for, what works, what doesn't. Plus, if you have any questions if this tent works, just look at Outdoor Vitals YouTube channel. Most of their trips, these are the tents they use, whether it's in the Uinta Highline Trail area, getting hammered by wind and rain and snow, on the Appalachian Trail, desert scenarios, they've had it everywhere. And it seems to work. And one of the big things with this one is it is a little bit heavier fabric. I believe it's a 15 denier cell nylon instead of like a 10D that the Gossamer Gear the One uses. So there's a little bit heavier fabric to kind of strike that balance between lightweight but durability. That should also slightly reduce the stretching. Cell nylon is always a material that's going to stretch a little. It's always going to absorb a little moisture. It's not going to soak through and get you wet. It is waterproof, but in a rain it can stretch and kind of sag a little. But in theory, this should sag a little less than like my Gossamer Gear the One. The other thing I want to see with this, setting it up, is the ventilation should be better in this. If you, again, watched my video or you've ever seen a Gossamer Gear the One tent, that back wall is very solid, is all solid material with some mesh up at the top. And then around the sides, there's really no ventilation. It's just cell nylon into the bathtub floor. There's a little mesh vent at the head and a little one at the foot. And obviously the door side is all mesh. But it doesn't allow for a ton of breathability. This one has some different features. So I'm gonna set it up and we'll test out the space in it. I brought my sleeping pad. I did bring a quilt to throw in here. I brought a pillow, and I'll climb in it so we can see the space with a 6'1" larger human being inside this tent. I'll show you some of the features that really kind of set this tent apart, because I feel like it's kind of been labeled as just a copy. And I kind of thought it too at first. I thought this is really very similar to the Gossamer Gear tent. This is basically a carbon copy. But I feel like they took that design and they've tweaked it and they've made it a little bit better. So I'm not gonna record setting it up. There's other videos for that. I'm gonna set it up. Before I put stuff in it, I'll set it up and then we'll kind of walk around the outside and look at some of the features, and then I'll put some stuff in, get in it, and I'll give you some of my thoughts on it. So there's the finished product, Outdoor Vitals Fortius one-person tent. Took a little bit of fiddling because this is not flat ground here. It's basically a slope down, all the way down there. But where I was trying to put it where it's flatter, there's like rock and everything under the ground. So I had to move it. But for the sake of this video, this works. So as you can see, that's the door side. And then over here, it's just got the pullouts in the center like most of these. I just put a stick to kind of pull that up because that's where my head would be. Here's the back. This It's not a door, but it's just a little awning. And then here's the foot end with the same pull out. So very similar to the Gossamer Gear the One until you look at it like that. And you can see it's kind of angled. So the idea with that is that's going to make this shed wind better. It changes the profile of it. So now when a wind hits it at the foot or the head end, it's not just a giant sail. It can kind of go over the top of that, which again, I have no practice with because I've never used this tent. It's not mine. But watching different videos of them with this tent, it seems to hold up in pretty much everything they put it through. So that was one design thing I kind of wanted to see in person. And it's a pretty good difference. Like, I have that front trekking pole set at about 123 centimeters. And that's just because this is uneven ground, which always makes pitching a trekking pole tent a little more difficult, but you can usually get it there. And that back one is at like 115. So it is a difference, but that should make it a little bit more wind stable, similar to more of like a pyramid style or just a one trekking pole style, but still gives you some more space inside too. So setup, really, once you get it and start messing with it, no different than any other trekking pole tent. So I like that. The guy lines out here, they come with a ton of cordage on them. And the reason for that is just to be able to change your pitch, kind of like this. So I'm dealing with rocky areas. You know, sometimes when you have shorter guy lines, like the Durston X-Mid has pretty short guy lines. So it can make it hard to pitch sometimes. You get all 3 of the 4 corners in perfect spots, and then that 4th one, you struggle because there's a root or a rock. And you can't play with the angles too much on these, otherwise it won't pitch correctly. So with the extra guy line, you can pull it out further to find a spot where you can pitch it. Or if you're in an area where it's hard to put stakes in the ground and you need to use rocks, like desert areas, rocky terrain, or sometimes a trekking pole tent is difficult, you have a lot more guy line to stretch out to set a rock on the guy line. So I like that. And if you don't need that and you want to save an ounce, cut them off, I guess. But I don't think you'll notice that difference. So anyway, we're gonna open it up. And this is the blue color. It comes in a blue and a green. I do like the blue. But I'm gonna open it up here and then climb in, and I'll bring the camera in there. And climb inside. And so from sitting in here, now that I'm in the shade, I can take this off. Initial impressions on the space in here. This is pretty good space. You know, that's always a concern with one-man tents, is how much room are you gonna have? And you've got plenty of space in here for sure. I do like that. And I like with this pole back here, it, you know, unlike a one pole style, it keeps this up. So I've got a ton of space back here. And we talk about ventilation, because that was, let me take my shoes off and actually get in here. I'm on a slope, but we'll talk about that in a minute too. So ventilation, let's talk about that. It was always a concern with a single wall trekking pole tent. If you don't have good ventilation, you know, you're asking for a condensation nightmare. And that is way better in this tent than the Gossamer Gear the One tent. I'm just gonna throw it out there, because this is all mesh, and you got the bathtub here, and it does come up a little higher right here to offset that awning, because it doesn't come all the way to the ground, again, to promote airflow. So the bathtub comes up a little higher in case you're in a driving rain from this side. I would have no fear of getting wet at all. There's a little pocket right here too. But I can feel it just sitting here. Like, this tent will breathe very, very well. There's a ton of mesh even at the ends. This is all mesh where the bathtub comes up to. I'll bring in here and show you in a minute. But as far as space in here, now I'm sloped the wrong way. You know, if I were to lay with my head down here, my feet here, my feet would be above my head. Which, if this was the Gossamer Gear tent, now I got to re-pitch the whole tent. But with this tent, it's not tapered at either end. I think it's tapered a little. I think it is. I'll put the specs for the width. I want to say it's like 28 inches, but it doesn't have the taper. So that makes it to where I can pitch it, and depending on my slope, I can sleep with my head whichever end I want. So I would just, in this instance, turn around, and I can lay down with a hat on. I'm not on my pad yet, but I've still got space up at either end, and my feet are in no real risk of touching. And granted, I pulled that end up. I pulled this end up with a stick. I could do the same at that end to give myself more space. But you really got a good amount of room in here. It's not as roomy on the inside as my Gossamer Gear the One. But again, you can't get a Gossamer Gear the One anymore in the size that mine is. So I would say this is probably closer. This is like a good in-between. It's not as roomy as mine, but it's definitely bigger than the new ones. And just in general, this is plenty of space for a one-man trekking pole tent. The mesh over here makes it feel bigger. I don't feel claustrophobic at all in here, and you just I really like this. Definitely good on the space end. So let me bring you in here and I'll show you a little more. Okay, so now you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Like, see, that's all mesh, and there's the bathtub, so it's a little bit higher. So if you do get some rain splashing from this side, if you get some rain splashing from this side, it's not going to come in the tent. And then down there, you can see the mesh that goes all the way around, and it's the same at the head end. So again, if you watched my review for the Gossamer Gear the One, that is a concern a lot of people talk about, is that's just sil nylon that runs straight down and connects to the bathtub floor. Now, I've never had it happen, but in theory, the problem you could have is moisture and condensation collecting on the fly and running right down into your bathtub. With the mesh, it would run down that and hit the mesh and drip out. So it'll help you from getting even more wet in here. I mean, I'm sure you're still gonna get condensation. It's a single wall tent. It just is what it is, but there's nowhere near as many panels to collect the condensation as there are in that Gossamer Gear the One. You got to worry about this whole back wall. You know, the mesh starts up here, and it's just a vent. But it works, but this feels better. You can get a breeze all the way across. And then, like I say, if I lay down, and again, I'm 6'2", my feet have plenty of space down there. There's still plenty of room at the head. On the sides of me, there's definitely space to store stuff if I want to put stuff in here with me. And I'm not, nowhere am I touching this. Now, I'm not on a sleeping pad yet, so I can get a pad in here and we'll see how that does, but I don't think I'll touch. So I would say impressions from just setting it up and getting inside of it, this is a pretty sweet tent for sure. So I'm gonna put my shoes back on, go get my sleeping pad, blow it up, bring my pillow in here, and then we'll see how that works. Okay, so here we are. So this is just a regular Nemo Uberlight pad in here. So it's not the long wide, but you can see at the foot how much space you have. A long wide would be no issue. Hello, Bumblebee. Would be no issue whatsoever. Plenty of space up at the head end, so looks pretty good from that aspect. So I'm gonna climb in here and we'll see how I fit on a pad. Okay, so Now we're on the pad. Let's lay back on the pillow. Whew. And again, on the pillow, laying here, I mean, I have my hat on, and I could pull this up more at an angle if I needed to. And I have plenty of space right here, plenty of elbow room. You know, even if this was a wide pad, I'd have enough space. My feet are nowhere near touching. You can kind of see, like laying down. I mean, I'm stacking my feet on my pad, and I have to really go up. So a quilt, I'll still have plenty of space. I'll still have plenty of space sitting up. Sorry. Sitting up, I have no issue moving around either. Yeah, this is plenty of room for someone 6'1", 6'2". Plenty of room still at the foot to put gear. So as far as fit for a one-person tent, you know, this is very roomy. This is a very livable tent. Like if I was stuck in a storm in this tent, I wouldn't feel too claustrophobic. Like I could hang out in here and have no issue. Plenty of space up here. You know, there's little tabs at the corners, kind of just like the Gossamer Gear has little tabs that you could take a stake. It's hot. You could take a stake and stake them in the ground, or tie some line. Like you could tie, I've seen people who've like tied some shock cord to those to tie them to the, put them on your stakes at the corners just to kind of flatten the bathtub out. But I don't think there's any reason to. By the time you get in here, put some gear in here, it shapes really well. Some tents, that would be a problem. This one, it shapes just fine. So, and again, I don't know if I have the perfect pitch on this. Like I'm on a slope. This is kind of a rough setup, but these poles should arc out a little. Not as much as the Gossamer Gear one, but they'll arc out a little at the top. It is made to be that way, to give you a little more space. But this is fine. I would say, you know, I've made the comments on that Gossamer Gear video that, you know, it sucked that they shrunk the size of it, and it almost made it to where a taller person is kind of hard to do with that tent. This one takes care of that. This is plenty of space for a bigger person. I think they advertise it as someone like 6'4", 6'5" could use this, and I think you could. You'd probably be right at the edge. You might have some touching issues, but I mean, at that height, you're kind of gonna be. I think it would still work, but 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2". Sorry, 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2". This is a great tent, and it just, I mean, I'm never in danger of touching anywhere when I move, which again is why I like the 2-pole one-person tents versus the 1-pole. Is I've got space to go kind of all over the place, and I don't ever feel like I'm gonna touch. So as far as first impressions and fit, I really like it. As far as the quality of it, like, it's not mine. I've never, it's not brand new. You know, I can tell it was kind of dirty. It's obviously been on some trips. And there's no like fraying of any seams, nothing on the inside, like nothing that I would look at this and think, this is kind of so-so construction. You know, they really, like any other piece of this Outdoor Vitals gear, there's a lot of thought behind it, and it is very well built. Like, they don't just cut corners in places. It is very well built. So the last thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna get out, I'm gonna show you one other feature that they add to this tent that makes it incredibly storm worthy. Okay, so a couple other things with the tent. So there's your vestibule too, which you've got a ton of space in there. Easily can fit your pack, shoes, whatever. You have plenty of space over here to cook, even when it's closed. Tons of space in that vestibule, so that is no concern. But then here's something else that they do. So you see these little D-rings, right? These guys right here. You've got them kind of all around the tent. And what they do, they give you extra guy line. They give you 2 that have little clips, little plastic clips that you can clip to those and then stake into the ground. So once you set this up, wherever you're taking the brunt of the wind from, you can attach another line and stake it out just to add to the structure of the tent. So again, going back to specifically with the Gossamer Gear tent, my issues with it being kind of a wind sail. You know, I like the tent, but I typically shy away from taking it when I know it's going to be a lot of rain or wind. I never took it because I didn't, not that I didn't trust it, but I didn't want it flapping around all the time. This tent gives me a little more confidence just with its shape. It's a little bit heavier material. Those extra guy lines to be able to put around really would make this so it can withstand some serious weather. So that's it for kind of the look around and sitting inside it. I'll give you my final thoughts on it here in a minute. All right, so what do I think about the Outdoor Vitals Fortius one-person tent? Well, ultimately, I think it's great. You know, this was just kind of getting my hands on it, playing around with it. You know, I hope you get something out of this video. Definitely, if you've got questions about it, you know, comment down below with them. Again, the guy that sent this to me, I appreciate you, buddy. Like, thank you very much for letting me do this. I think it's an awesome tent. You know, I was really, it was really hard for me when people would ask me about, like, whether it was that Gossamer Gear tent or about one-person tents. Like, I always wanted to recommend that tent, but the biggest problem is when they changed the sizing of it. You know, that really limited its usability to me, and this tent takes care of that. You know, overall, 26 ounces is your whole package. The tent, the extra storm guy lines they send you, 8 stakes. You get a lot of tent for 26 ounces. You know, not counting the stakes and the guy lines, which, you know, when they start comparing tents to, you know, weight back and forth, I don't necessarily think it's fair to compare them with the stakes and everything, because you can change those out. So the tent itself is like 22 ounces, which is right on par with my version of the Gossamer Gear the One. Comparing even to my version of the Gossamer Gear the One, I think I like this better. I honestly think I like this better. The little bit tougher material gives me a little more confidence in it. The ventilation in it is definitely better, for one. That's a huge benefit. I like the way that, just like in this scenario right now, I pitched it in a way that I couldn't lay my head at the end I thought I was going to because of the slope. And the Gossamer Gear tent, I'd have been taking it down and redoing it. This one, I just, you know, turn around. So that's a huge deal. But if you're looking for a tent that's this ultralight, one person, single wall trekking pole tent, this should definitely be on your radar. You know, if it's not, because it's not a big name brand, that's kind of a silly reason. I feel like there's enough out there now about Outdoor Vitals gear that you should know it's solid stuff. It really is. I would definitely add this one to your list if you're looking for that ultralight trekking pole tent. I'd have all the confidence in the world in this tent that it would make it through any weather and be comfortable while doing it. It's got plenty of space on the inside of it. That's it for this. Hopefully you got something out of that little video. Again, the guy that sent it to me to test, thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate it. Any questions about this tent, leave it in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're knocking the door of 1,000 subscribers, which is amazing. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. Plenty of videos coming up. The next tent comparison video, you know, I'm gonna do this tent and compare it to the Durston X-Mid one-person tent. I'll have another one coming up comparing my tarp tent dipole one-person tent to an X-Mid one-person pro, so that should be fun. And of course, more trip videos and things like that. So thanks for watching. Have a good day.